Hello and welcome back to the We Should Talk More podcast.
Wow.
The podcast where two lifelong friends who don't have much in common try to get a little bit closer. See, I'm trying to prove that I can be energetic on a podcast and still talk directly into the mic. My name is John Alzate, and man, I don't got much to say, but I love sports.
Wowzers.
How you doing, co-host?
You were really prepared for this one.
I came out hot.
I can tell. Well, hi, I'm Josh Cornell, star quarterback of the Rutgers football team.
Solid.
Yeah.
And we're the Talk More podcast. We should talk more podcasts.
We're the Talk More podcast, but John brought something special for us today before we open it up.
We got a special drink.
We're
sponsored. We're sponsored.
Provided by
Coke.
Coca-Cola.
Thank you, Coke, for sponsoring me. Oh, sorry, sponsoring us.
Jeez.
Now we're gonna try
narcissism on this man.
We're gonna try to open these
with the mic being able to hear the crackle of the can.
You didn't wait for
You're over here. John is still struggling to open up his can. Do you need help?
I got it.
Okay. And it's a coffee variation. It's not just Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
It's a Coca-Cola with coffee.
With coffee. So we're trying to change it up, what we're drinking. It is a coffee drink, technically. Mm-hmm. But let's take a sip.
Yeah. Wow. All right, let's get on to the show.
We have a good episode today. I'm not going to say special. No, it's special. The most special episode, as always. If you guys haven't watched, we did an episode about Josh's time in Wisconsin. He had a great time there. But there was something he mentioned.
I passed right over.
Like you just said it and we went past it, but
did not want to talk about it.
This MFer got fired. And we teased you with it. And today we're going to dive into it head first. So I think we should just get into it, but do you want to, I guess, go over how you're going to structure like what you want to go through? Maybe we can talk about
why not?
Or I'll go over it since I need a talking role. All right, so we're going to start with, he's going to give us some context on his time in college. That's going to last about 5 minutes.
Leading up to the position, yeah.
Leading up to getting the job and the context for it. He's going to talk about the job itself. What are you going to touch upon in that? Just the work you're doing?
Like as if you're reading the job description.
Okay. And then you're going to talk about your culture at your job. That should be exciting. And you're going to talk about the challenges you faced. And then you're going to talk about getting fired. And then we'll conclude with any major takeaways that you got from it. Yeah. So let me ask you, Josh. Tell me about college Joshie getting a job position. Oh, we didn't even say where you were working at. You're working at Epic.
I was working at Epic. And Epic what?
Epic Solutions. Epic Games.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone can confuse this with anywhere. Oftentimes, like you just suggested, people think I worked at Epic Games. I did not work at Epic Games.
Someone once hit you up asking about like a position at Epic Games, right?
They have.
Have they? Yeah,
I believe I've gotten a message or two asking about Epic Games on LinkedIn. And also, even in Wisconsin, or Madison, Wisconsin, where everyone around you knows people who work at Epic, the healthcare software company, which I'll dive into a little bit more later on. Everyone knows what Epic is. It's like a universal term. But there was one time I was in like a Uber and somebody asked the same stupid question, if I worked at Epic Games. I'm like, Jesus, you live here. You should know.
That's funny. So like when he asked what you did you just say you work at Epic?
Yeah, and
then
usually
you just-
everyone understands.
Okay, yeah,
Because the population is so large over there.
Yeah, so like I guess like over there it would be easy just to say that, like expecting people to know. But yeah, that's funny.
You expect people to know out
Yeah.
there. You can tell, like, if you speak to anyone here, like, there's no expectation of having to know what Epic is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, so you were working there, had to give that context. But tell me about the
lead up.
your last weeks in college and getting that job.
Yeah, so we already touched and gave the spoiler. I got fired.
Yeah.
Everyone knows. It's the title of this podcast episode. It's all in the promotion and the ad spend that we put into this. Now, I wanted to give the context. Just for my own vanity, I was a very successful college student. Very successful. 3.9 GPA. Biomedical engineering.
Very cool, Kanye.
Thank you.
That was written in the script for this episode.
That is scripted right there. And so I never really faced failure.
That's good context. Now that you see, when I saw that you wrote that down, I was like thinking, he's just humble bragging, but that is good context. Like having always done well, failure sucks.
Exactly. So at this point in my life, I don't know what failure is like. 8th grade, like ever since like entering high school, throughout college, I was always like a really successful student. So,
No, I thought you were gonna say
extremely successul.
No, I thought you were gonna be like, oh, like ever since like middle school, I've never failed at anything. I was like, oh, all right. Oh shit.
No, I definitely had like challenges that I faced and some struggles, but I was always able to get past it. My last year of college, I started applying myself in many different directions after I got out of my after I broke up or had my breakup with my ex-girlfriend at the time, which we talked about like last week, I think. And from there on, like I made myself a lot more actively involved in school. I was almost always at school doing something, very busy. Whether I was part of the solar car team where I was like leading the suspension sub team, or being part of participating in the drone competition. There was a drone competition back when I was in college, and I was focusing my attention in many of those aspects. That I ended up not applying for graduate school like I actually initially planned in that point in my life.
What made you not want to do grad school?
It was not that I didn't want to do grad school. I just didn't
Want to apply?
Didn't meet the deadline of applying. I didn't feel the pressure to. So because I saw there was no pressure to, and I can always have a fallback of like getting into industry, and it ended up becoming a little more desirable for me at that point in my life. Thinking ahead of having to be in school longer than I was already in school. While I was always good in school, as we can tell through the academic success, wanted to take on new challenges. And it was kind of a new mindset coming out of my relationship at that time. So I was exploring a lot of different facets of what direction I can take my career. So at that point, I just was applying for jobs, got my first offer at Epic. And context here, I didn't get any other offers because it was such a nice compensation and it seemed like a good deal that I didn't really bother to anymore at that rate. So I just moved forward with it. I did have like a few other applications I was working through in hiring processes. I flew out to Boston for a job interview at MathWorks, the company that owns MATLAB, which is a software that's used by a lot of engineers. And I thought that was exciting, but I ended up getting rejected. And after that, I didn't really care to apply too much more. So going forward, I was prepared to just take the offer and move out to Wisconsin. And we touched on it before, but that just interested me a lot because it was a big move. It was that challenge.
Yeah. New adventure.
Yeah, new adventure, new journey, and a lot of risk. So I move out there. So that's like the context leading up to moving out there to Epic, and wanted to get into a little bit about what Epic is, what the structure is, what my job really entailed. So we can come in with like a better understanding of what happened leading up to the big failure of getting fired. So Epic, for those who don't know, and we touched on it a little bit.
I don't know. I still don't know.
Yeah, how would you describe it in your own words, John?
No idea. They healthcare software, and they have stuff in hospitals. Their software is used in hospitals.
Yeah, that's
really. But I don't know what their software is. I just know they do healthcare software.
No, I mean I can dive into it a little bit more, and hopefully I do it justice. But that's usually how I generally describe it to people. Just as a healthcare software company is easy. For me to just say, well, next time you go to the hospital, look at a computer and see if they have an Epic logo on it. If they do, they're using Epic. And that's what Epic is.
Epic.
Yeah, more than 50% of the U.S. population, if I have the numbers right, at least it says on the Wikipedia page, our U.S. patients are maintained on Epic.
That's epic.
That was whack. So, where they really fall in is what's called EMR, electronic medical records. That's a specific space in maintaining medical charts in a electronic system.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Before you'd have medical charts like just actually, on paper. Yeah. And bringing that onto a computer so you don't have to manage all that. So there's a lot more to it than that as you think about all the different spaces in the healthcare organization. Remember, we'll get into a little bit later, I worked in the cardiology app. There's an application just for outpatients and inpatients, and then for different specialty areas, and for insurance and billing, all that stuff. So with that context, that's kind of how Epic is organized. It's organized into different applications, and then the team structure underneath is the same almost across the board. So like I just mentioned, there are sub-teams based on applications that exist within the Epic software.
Got it.
And I worked in Cupid, the cute name for cardiology.
Oh, that is cute.
Yeah. That's how they do things over there in Epic. They give a cute name to all their applications.
And their employees.
Did I have a cute name?
Yeah, I thought you did.
What was my cute name?
You let me know. You worked there.
I did not have a cute name.
I guess that's why you got fired.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. We're kidding.
Ow. There'd be those sub-teams or applications. And underneath those applications.
So shut up. Tell me about tell me about what the hell Cupid was.
It's the software used to manage the cardiology procedures.
So like is it something that's being used by people that are working at the hospital? So like if you're so it's managing the data of cardiology procedures. So like if they have like patient data, is it just being
patients that are going in for anything that's related to their heart? Their medical charts are probably going through a workflow that involves Cupid. So whether that's going in just for a ECG or going in to get a invasive procedure into the heart, they will fall into somewhere along the workflow into Cupid.
And is there a reason that they split that up versus like, I mean, is there something that's for like the respiratory system or something? Like, do they have like apps? Like,
I think they might. I forget what it would call.
But like, it works. Does it work the same like the way Cupid works, or is there certain things to Cupid that makes it different?
You wouldn't even notice. Like, if you were a user in the software, applications all seem like the one same app.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, they call it hyperspace.
They call it the hyperspace?
They call it hyperspace.
Okay.
Hyperspace is entire software of say you are in, I'm trying to think of a good analogy if we have one. No, Epic just does it so different. So it is the overall software. You enter into hyperspace. you could get into any of the sub applications.
And they all like look and
It all
from
is the
a
same
user perspective.
Yeah, it's nothing different.
Yeah, cool.
Nothing is different. Okay. The analogy I always think is like, to explain it, is there's different applications like you'd have in Microsoft, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. But the visuals of each of those, while they all have the same like framework, you can obviously tell that you're entering into different apps. You can't really tell when you're in Epic. So it all looks the same. Cool. Anyway, the underlying structure now, the team structure underneath, is you have software developers. That's intuitive. That makes sense. You have people who have to develop the software underlying the code. And then you have an implementation team. So the way that Epic makes money is that they have healthcare organizations that pay big bucks to be able to use their software. And so in order for a healthcare organization to actually be able to use the software, it has to be implemented to meet their implementation needs, their configuration needs. So however the healthcare organization structures their business, the software has to be configured around that. So the implementation team will take on that project and lead it up until it gets transitioned over to somebody that was in my role, technical services, TS. And so in technical services, you serve as ongoing support for that customer. So as a technical service person, you'd get staffed to 3 to 6, however many customers that you can prioritize, and meet with them weekly, triage their issues, and resolve their issues.
Who would be the client that you're like talking to? Would it be like a single person? Like I understand like you'd be working with like a hospital, but like who at that hospital is really?
That's a great question. The hospital has their own IT team that works directly with Epic.
Okay.
So that's the first line of defense when you think from the hospital's perspective of working through issues that come up in the software.
They'll always go to their IT person first.
It's like the help desk there. The IT team will look at the issues. If it lands in their bucket because it falls into their application, they take care of it and they'll resolve it. If it's something that's out of their hands that they need Epic support for, they bring it to us. So we're like second line there, or last line. And so we look at it. We provide any support that we can. If we can't solve it then and there, we just take it internally, look at it, continue to check the code. If it has some resolution that could be done with the code, maybe there's a smaller configuration tweak. You can speak to some internal support, see if they have some bright ideas of what can be done to resolve an issue, and then you deliver. You go back to the IT team and let them know what you were able to come up with. Sometimes it's a workaround, sometimes it's a resolution. Depends on like what the issue is and if there is a solution in Epic.
So how many clients were you working with?
3.
And are they typically assigning you to people who have recently like taken on the Epic software, or are you just working with people who have it and you're just like constantly just like working with them if they need you?
They try to mix it up a little bit.
Okay.
So one of my clients was someone who just got onto Epic. I had my first go live. A go live is when someone takes on the software and it's the first time that the healthcare floor is actually using it. So go lives are intense situations because, as you can imagine, first time using a software, there's going to be a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Not only because maybe something wasn't configured right, but everyone who's using it, they don't know what they're doing. It's like saying you come into work and you're not using Outlook anymore.
Yeah.
There's new tools that you're using and you have to learn how to use the software. It slows you down a little bit in the beginning. Oh man, it was a really bad choice to get us Coca-Cola. Man,
actually, I'm taking baby sips.
I'm about halfway through. Bro, I drink when we do these podcasts.
I know. I tend to not even touch anything. You're already halfway through your water.
Exactly.
Let me take some gulps.
Yeah, I'm trying to get myself refreshed a little bit. That's why I look so young and you tend to age. Yeah, your health is a little out of place.
Yeah, it's not doing too good.
Anyway, so what was your question?
how they assign like the type of client that you work with. I mean, well, I guess. You
So it's a mix. Yeah. So I was going to say, well, before I get into the go live, because there is good context there. I also had a client that was someone who has been using Epic for like the past 10 years or so, and they can handle their like. Sometimes there's go lives that you'll have in the even after you have your initial go live, because like you have new hospitals that are going live on the software. So they continue to have like a yearly go live with new hospitals, this specific customer. But at this point, their IT team is so strong that they usually don't need too much Epic support. General go live, Epic is flown out, or Epic employees are flown out to their site, and they'll work like 12-hour days to support tickets. And this might be through the weekend. But the context I wanted to provide here is my first go live was 2.5 months into working at Epic, which is very early on in Epic timelines, I guess, because to understand the software, you don't really understand it too well 2.5 months in.
Because you're still being like onboarded to like.
Yeah. You're still going through a lot of training. You're still considered fairly new. You definitely do not have complete responsibility over your customers yet. There's other internal support who. But
you're like the first point of contact, I guess, right? So like if you didn't understand it, then you would have to bring it to someone else.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
For a go live, there's also the implementation team there.
Oh, yeah.
Which you'll usually have someone who's a little more senior to be able to speak to. So as a TS, you're there for additional support and for building the understanding. So when it's handed off to you, when the customer is handed off to you, you understand their configuration, you understand their system, and you can continue to support them going forward. So that makes sense. It's just that it was fairly rough going in 2.5 months to support your first go live without really knowing much about the software. But yeah, I think that gives a bit of a breakdown of how Epic works and how the structure and team support works behind the scenes. You have TS, you have implementation, and you have like software development.
I had one last question. For clients like the one you mentioned that are ones that have had it for like 10 years and they at that point they're like relying on their IT team, what is your role? Like how
you still meet with them like weekly, but sometimes like the volume of work is just significantly less.
Yeah.
So I'll say one of my customers, it would be ups and downs. There would be times where a lot comes in, other weeks you don't really hear from them. You don't really need to hear from them.
But I guess like Epic, did they like regularly like release like updates or whatever? So like when an update would come out, then like even a client that's so seasoned, you just have to be there just in case if there's anything.
Okay, great question, man.
Yeah.
You're really guiding this.
I'm trying to.
Upgrades are something that they continue to push, and upgrades are important so they can stay up to date with their software. And it is a big project on the technical service side to be able to support upgrades. So we're expected to be familiar with what upgrades are coming for our specific application, so for Cupid, and be able to guide them in the right direction as to what would help them best in configuring their software. And they take primary responsibility of it when it comes to upgrades, but you should be prepared to answer questions concerning upgrades.
Yes, you're like fully informed on like.
Yeah, because they go through the upgrade notes. They review them. They decide whether or not they're going to take it on. If they take it on, they go through the build and they go through testing and releasing and pushing it up to production. So that's all onto their responsibility. But somewhere along the line, there's oftentimes there's questions. Sometimes it's something that they don't like. Sometimes it's our responsibility to push them in that direction to take on those upgrades because we would prefer them to use the latest software to continue to test it out, really. All right.
Yeah, that was my last question. So I think it's time to get into culture.
Brass tacks.
Brass tacks. Let's get into the work culture.
Okay, this is where it becomes a little more fun. And the first bullet point,
Fun.
So anyone who is familiar with Epic, who has ever gone through their interviewing process, or whoever has been on site, or whoever has worked in the healthcare industry and has worked with Epic employees and have seen the campus itself, well, no, it's very intentionally designed to be fun. For example, I worked in the Wizard of Oz building.
I remember this.
Yep, it was beautiful. My campus was designed after children's storybooks. And there's other campuses like designed, mocked up after Harry Potter's. They didn't actually have the rights to Harry Potter, so they like slightly adjusted it to make sure they weren't violating anything legally.
But would they? How much did the design go into reflecting these places? Like, or was it just like rooms were named after like?
Like conference rooms would be named after special details as part of like what the theme is.
Yeah.
The building outside like is evident
Yeah.
that there's some theme going on.
I feel like I remember you sent me a photo of like the Harry Potter one or something, and it looked like they made like
they put
Hogwarts
a
like,
lot of work. They put a lot of money down into
Universal
this.
Studios at like the Hogwarts land or something.
Oh yeah, the Harry Potter campus is like one of the most beautiful ones. Yeah, it's one of the coolest ones to check out.
What were some of the other ones?
There's a farm.
That's cool.
I like the farm because it's very spacious and like the scenery is beautiful. Then there's like buildings named after stars in the galaxy. And then there's that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Is also like this that campus that you were working out of, is that like Epic's main headquarters? Is that why it's like so large with all these like multiple different
oh yeah, I mean you have 10,000 employees, and all 10,000
Wow.
employees are to live within 45 minutes of the company.
Wow.
So everyone moves out there. At least during pre-COVID times, they may have changed the policy. For context, I guess, is I got fired around the time of COVID. My last day was mid-April. I got noticed in February. So that gave me like 2 months to be able to up and like prepare myself for leaving and having to find something new. So generally that's okay.
Is that like general practice for them to give people that much time?
Yeah, I mean, I read online and it looks like it used to be 6 weeks. Or maybe it followed some type of cycle as to when they generally fire people, but I really don't know the inside details for that. I think it's supposed to be 2 months. At least I received 2 months notice. So fun is part of it.
Yeah.
Like one of the benefits is a 5-year sabbatical.
I remember you mentioning this.
If you work there for 5 years, you have a sabbatical that you can go away.
Only after 5 years? That's awesome. So like after 5 years of work, I thought like, because aren't some sabbaticals after like a while of working there?
Oh yeah.
Like a company, but like 5 years isn't really that much.
Yeah. After 5 years, you get a 1 month sabbatical.
Wow.
They'll pay for your flights. They might pay for your accommodations. I don't remember.
Do you remember telling me that you would that we would go on your vacation together? I think I remember talking with you.
You get a +1.
Yeah.
You get a +1 for your
I
sabbatical.
was like, can I go with you?
I probably did have you in mind at
You
the time.
probably go if I didn't have like a significant other, sure.
If I don't find a partner within 5 years, then fine. I'll settle for John.
For me.
So yeah, there's a 5-year sabbatical. Now getting into, I guess, the not so fun stuff is work-life balance isn't really there so much. Work-life balance, it's kind of generally expected across the board that you should work over 40 hours. And people accept that. It's generally accepted knowing that it's just a name of the game with Epic, where you're getting compensated well for coming in new, fresh, out of college. And so you put in the hard work and you see how you do.
Did they ever tell you like what your actual like hours were? Was it like, let's say 9 to 5 was exactly like what you're getting paid for? Anything more, like you're not actually going to get paid for that? Like did you have like a set time that you knew was when you were supposed to start and stop, even though if you went over?
I mean, you timesheet everything. You put everything, you log all your time.
Even when you go over?
Yeah,
Just to put-
but that's not used as any way that's going to decide your salary. Your salary is set.
Yeah.
If you make a certain amount in a year, that's what you're going to get in your paychecks. Whether you go over or not, there isn't any like defined timelines of like, hey, work between 8:30 and 5:30. But I mean, that's generally like the expectations.
Yeah.
You can leave earlier if you get your work done. No one's gonna really question you. You come in and leave at 4 o'clock every day, as long as you're getting all your work done by 4 o'clock. That's totally fine. The first bus comes like 5 on the dot.
Yeah.
So to be able to catch that bus, you have to leave before 5. So it's definitely expected.
Were there many people doing that though?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There are many people. That's honestly the busiest bus. But you can also think that maybe some of those folks go back home to do more work.
Yeah.
There's the same people that you always see on the 5 o'clock bus. I used to take the bus, if you can't tell. And the same exact people you always see at the 6:30 bus, the last bus you can catch. Like the same population of people is consistent. The people who always leave early are always leaving early. The people who are always leaving late are leaving late. And that might just be speak to how people prioritize and manage their time. I found myself somewhere in the middle. I usually left around like 5:30. Sometimes I stayed later. Sometimes I left early, depending on how the workday was. But it was hard to find that balance, especially with the understanding too that early on, that expectations are high. It's a like sink or swim type of scenario where they'll give you customers early on, and it's dependent on your customers. You might have a high volume of work. You might have high expectations to meet. And if you can't meet it, then you sink. There's not much to it. And you're discarded. That's that's a very cruel way to like put it.
But is that what it felt like at the time? Like while you're working there, was there like a feeling amongst people like if you don't like because I would imagine that would be scary if you knew that's how it was.
No, yeah. I don't think I felt that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I fully acknowledge, and I'll dive into this a little bit more once we get into some of the challenges I faced working at the company. But I don't feel like that was
something that you thought about.
I was very mindful of at the time because I wasn't thinking
you never failed.
I would, anything would like really slow me down in this. I kind of came in with a level of excitement that joining these calls without much experience and seeing what possibilities can come out of it and see if I can traject my career forward kind of excited me a lot. Like those high pressure situations, I wanted to like enter and run into like head first, like chest up high and everything.
Oh.
That's what got me juiced. Like at the end of the day, when thinking about this.
Yeah.
So that's at the time I didn't really question too much about the work-life balance or the sink or swim like attitude towards the culture because I thought it was exciting. I thought there was a lot of trust that's being put into their employees and a lot to prove, a lot to demonstrate of what you can accomplish.
But I guess like back to like the work-life balance part, did you feel like you were bringing a lot home and like you weren't like, was it affecting your personal life in any way?
I didn't really focus on anything outside of work.
Okay.
Outside of work, and I'll get into this a little bit too, is I was either just working or I was going out and drinking. I didn't really do much in between. And that's probably something that like significantly impact my ability to like perform for the company itself.
Were you how were you feeling like mentally? Like were you like just content or just like, cuz it sounds like you were edging to like burning out. But I don't know how you were feeling at the time.
That's definitely a big part of the culture. I guess like I should have wrote that down. Burnout's like a big thing. I don't feel like I was necessarily experiencing it too much. I definitely had some burnout. And like it's tough for me to answer it here because this I feel like I'm still in the culture segment.
Yeah.
But yeah, burnout definitely has like a burnout definitely like held me back a little bit, and like impacted like my day to day when I was going about working at Epic, because there were times that I felt I had some triumphs, and then other times that I didn't, where I just either saw what I had to do to resolve it or just kind of gave up on it. And that attitude kind of came as a result of burnout. So one last thing I wanted to touch upon before like going forward into some of the challenges is feedback's a big part of the culture too. And that's one of the things that I think were more important that I got out of working at Epic, or one of the better parts of the culture, where there's a openness in giving and receiving feedback. You're expected from like day one, is made clear that feedback is how you're judged, is how your your performance is measured. So
how often were you getting feedback?
Excuse me. Like on a weekly basis. You meet with your team lead weekly. Your team lead is like your supervisor, manager, for Epic terms. So you meet with your team lead on a weekly basis, and there your team lead would do their best to like gather feedback and deliver it at that point. So though, like maybe on like a bi-weekly or tri-weekly basis, your team lead will set up calls with your customer or client to be able to gather some information on how Josh is doing now. What can he do better? Gather that information, speak to other people that I work with directly, depending on like an advisory position, a coach position, see how Josh is doing and gather that information and deliver it to him. And also any advice I ask for my team lead myself, and like that information that he's able to get from like, oh, well, how is Josh carrying himself? How is Josh delivering what he's to deliver? There's people who will shadow your calls. There, early on, you lead a lot of calls. That's why it's like very high pressure. You're working directly with the customer and leading the calls yourself, and then trying to resolve issues in the system where you don't really have a clear understanding of how the system works sometimes.
Yeah.
So in that situation, you might have your team lead, or you might have outsider who's part of Epic, who works at Epic, listen in and shadow your call to gather some feedback as to what you can do better and improve on. So I like that a lot, because it gave you like actionable items to move forward, like digest. It might hit for a moment, but something to digest and think about what you can do next to improve. So that was definitely by far like one of the biggest like benefits, I think, or biggest part of the culture that I think was a great part. So I'll dive straight into what ended up resulting in me getting fired, like part of the like poor performance, and where I was really lagging behind, and a lot of it. And like I kind of already alluded, my time management wasn't the best. I wasn't doing the best as to managing my time where I didn't have to overexert myself. I was some weeks working 60 to 65 hours. Don't get me wrong. There are people I know, my former roommate. There's oftentimes, like from my understanding, he was mostly only working 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
There's other people I've met that didn't work all that much. So it's possible if you manage your time right. I mean, it might also just be a case by case situation where like how many customers you have and what their demands are. But they try to, like I was mentioning early on, divide up the customers in a way that they meet, like, oh, this customer is someone who's going live. This customer is someone who is has a lot of issues. And then this customer is someone who
has been around for a
while and they can handle themselves. So that's how they like divided up my customers, and like across the application, they try to do it for everyone else too. So the expectation and the measure of like success could be measured on a similar baseline. And so I ended up like working long weeks. And I attribute that a lot to just poor time management at the end of the day. So a lot of and that contributed a lot to like being stressed. Being stressed only like impacts your performance all the more. So like not balancing my time so well resulted in more stress, resulted in poorer performance. Then also I don't think I did a great job managing expectations with my customers, where sometimes I didn't have a clear understanding of how much time something was going to take, or I wouldn't have a great way of saying, I don't know, that I might give a overambitious expectation to my customers, or come across that way, where when I fail to deliver now because of those expectations, it will look bad on me.
Do you feel like you more often would try to give an answer, like let them know that you try to solve it instead of saying that you didn't know, like instead of it like admitting that you didn't know something? I mean, I guess you wouldn't really say that. You wouldn't want to say that to a client, but
you should.
You
should. If you don't know something, you really should just own up that you don't know something. And like,
but I mean, I'm just saying like there's different ways you can say that. Like you could, like instead of saying I don't know, I just mean like I don't have the answer. I'll try to find it for you. I mean, like would you do that often, or would you just
see? I don't think I did that enough.
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest issue. Is there's points in time where I was very conflicted in. This is a point that I have further down the line. There's a level of uncertainty of when you should say I don't know, especially early on, and everyone experiences this. This is not just me.
Yeah,
everyone comes in to a new job where if it's like client facing, if you're customer facing, and information comes to you that you don't know is something that you're expected to know or not, it's tough to like come across in a way where you don't want to look like you're not knowledgeable about like the question. And so you're conflicted. Do I own up here that I don't know? Or do I like try to gather what I can here and say, I don't know at this moment, let me get back to you, like you said. That's a great way to handle it. But also sometimes you might have some digging questions that you could have asked that would have gave clear leads as to what you should do to move forward. And you didn't get the opportunity to ask those questions because you diverted quickly to saying, I'm not sure about how to go about this. Let me get back to you. So you might have like critical information that's missing to be able to answer.
Yeah. So it's like more just like pushing those things away and not actually like diving into figuring out why you don't know it, or like trying to get more context.
You should definitely gather as much context as possible. It's just
in those moments it's
hard, and there's an expectation that you don't want to come across. There's an expectation working at Epic that we're what's called heroes to the heroes, heroes to the healthcare community.
Yeah,
we're providing the software to make sure that the heroes can do their jobs. So there's this underlying understanding across the board that there's a high expectation to me. There's a high level of skill that we're to have. And that had a reverse effect on me, where when I realized that I didn't want to come across as not knowing something, I would scramble or maybe ramble to try to avoid exposing myself. And so I struggled a lot with owning up to that.
Yeah.
I struggled a lot with not being able to say in moments when I should have that I don't know something. Can you provide more context as to how this workflow works or how this specific issue works? So I think that's important to be honest with early on and up front with some customers to make sure that they come in with an understanding of where you stand, so they can ensure that they can know how to ask a question to you. Because different levels of technical knowledge. Excuse me. My God, John, this was really a mistake. Different levels of technical knowledge will change how somebody should ask a question to you. You don't go into a meeting to tell somebody all the details of how you created a report if that doesn't bother them, or if that doesn't concern them, or if they don't know how to use Excel. You might go through more specific steps to walk through how to make a report if you know that person doesn't know how to use Excel all that well. So if you don't know how to use Epic all that well, or you don't know how to use a specific workflow in Epic all that well, somebody would walk you through it a little more.
It's like these people don't actually know like how much you know. So
yeah, they understand that, hey, you're the expert here, and they're gonna like surface over a lot of it if you don't slow them down. And I think I was god awful at that. I think I was terrible at being able to like guide the conversation in a way that would allow me to gather the information I needed. And that was very much on me. That was very much on me. While part of the conflict came from maybe like some internal expectations, as to coming across as like a hero for heroes. That had the reverse effect on me where I didn't want to expose myself. And I had like a huge imposter syndrome type of situation where I felt that the person that I was speaking to on the other side of the phone had this picture of me of someone who can intelligently use their software. And so now I'm here as an imposter who really doesn't know all that much, is fairly naive as to how to use the software, that it made it very difficult for me to feel successful or knowledgeable in it, that it would hold me back. It would hold me back that any like small successes in like using the software and understanding what's going on is more of a something attributed to luck than me actually being knowledgeable in. So there was always that internal struggle for me, I think, going through working at Epic. Last point is too that I didn't really there's times that I would have successes, and I would use that too as a cover to not have to worry about like all the negatives or failures that I had. That I think, oh, this success now will ensure that I have a safety net underneath me. When I'm thinking about like my creator performance all across the my time at Epic, there were definitely times I met with my team lead and there was negative feedback directed straight at me to work on, and then I'll work on that and I'll improve it, and then that success would make me feel like, look, I'm safe now. Yeah, I don't have much to worry about. So I kind of ignored a lot of the. Sometimes I would ignore a lot of the feedback that I should have been more mindful of. So that was another thing I think that I had as like a big shortcoming through my experience.
Do you think like you had an issue accepting like feedback, or do you want to get into like what, like an example of what some of the feedback was and how you responded to it? If there's something that you think that you like really ignored.
I definitely think I didn't like take feedback all that well when I was at Epic. There was definitely situations where I did not, that I probably ignored it and didn't move forward and improving it all that well. But I guess as for a specific situation, it's hard to come up with on the top of my mind. I think the biggest was going straight into a problem first before asking others.
They try to take it on yourself.
Yeah, giving that first stab more for yourself. And when I was asking others, they felt that sometimes it was evident that I didn't go for that first stab. So like when I received that feedback, it felt.
But you're saying that you did do the first stab.
And that's where the frustration comes.
Yeah, because they would say it felt like you didn't.
Where there's probably some truth to it. There's probably more I could have done before going to somebody for a question. It's just in the mindset of someone who didn't understand the software so much at that time, it was a big struggle for me to bridge that gap between what I understand and what they are expecting you to understand. And because there's that gap, I felt like I did not come across all that well at many occasions to be able to show that maybe I did like go for a first stab. So those were situations where I may have not have put in as much consideration in to try to improve, because I didn't have too clear of a direction in my head of how to proceed with that.
And do you think it's also like they probably also weren't fully aware of how much you like maybe didn't know? So like like if you're not communicating, like if you're not like asking them questions, and then you're just like showing something, it'll like if there's like things that you're not seeing, they're just like, you probably didn't look at this, because they maybe are expecting that you, because you're not communicating that you didn't know, so they're just expecting that maybe you didn't like thoroughly like look something over.
This feedback, I would say, is more when I was working with people internally, rather than with the client itself. So working with somebody internally, you come into them first for ask of saying, oh, how would I go about solving this issue without, and they would see the question as very not directed as to what steps I've already taken to try to solve it, which is a huge thing. Like you should take some steps and like be able to speak to that before asking somebody a question. So like there's a lot of truth to the feedback, and a lot of merit to the feedback that is well deserved if you're not taking the first steps into solving something and coming for some advice as to how to solve something first.
I guess like too, like it's like the difference of coming to somebody and just like asking them, instead of saying like, hey, I tried this, and like kind of letting them know what you did. And like where you're like, like specifically where you're kind of like messing up. Yeah.
And I think what I struggled with, as to why I struggled with that feedback was, well, if they don't receive it well in a way that the way that they respond to you comes across very rude or with attitude, it's hard for me to digest it well. Like that shit will get into my mind internally where I'm like, now I'm frustrated at him or her. And when I just came for a simple question, it's like, you could have said it nicer. Small things like that. Like, while it's so insignificant, it shouldn't really have an impact. That would stick. That would bother sometimes.
I mean, I feel like that's really relatable though. Like, when you have people above you, like the ones that you're expecting to have the answers, if they're not as like receiving to those questions, and you just stop wanting to ask them.
I think there's a way to brush off the answers to a question, or to divert somebody from coming to you for a question when it comes to something simple, where instead of like just saying like, hey, go back and like look at it, you can come across in a way that like you listen for a little bit, you take it in a little bit, but also come across with, there's expectation here that there's things that have to be done before coming and asking these questions. And like, there's a nice way to go about it, a nice way to say it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that's where I felt annoyed, or made it harder for me to receive the negative feedback sometimes, when things like that, where I thought was not well deserved, made me ignore some feedback. Excuse me. But it was definitely, like, looking back at it, definitely something to work on. Definitely something where, like, professional work, you keep it professional. Like, if somebody comes across to you in a way that isn't so nice, like, so be it. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. That was fitting. So those were a lot of my struggles at the time. I guess the imposter syndrome being like the biggest part there that really held me back and probably contributed to a lot of the negative feedback. So another key part that I didn't really touch upon, and I touched upon a lot in the Wisconsin episode, was just the bad habits.
The partying.
Staying
up late.
Drinking. Not fucking. That work-life balance was just not there. My life was epic, and everything else outside of that was just going out to drink. So that contributed so much to everything else I just talked about. Contributed so much for me not being mindful of what was going on. Contributed a lot into me not really working on figuring out next steps to make improvements. So while like Epic was very demanding in the way that you need to meet expectations and you might have to work overtime, a lot of that stress just induced me to say, oh, fuck it. Let me ignore work for a moment and go out. And so I don't think I coped with it well.
Mm-hmm.
I had very poor coping mechanisms at that time to handle the workload.
I want to get into the juice.
Then I got fired.
Can you walk me through how they fired you?
I guess as much as I'm allowed to.
Are there things you're not allowed to say?
No, I don't think so. I walked into my TL's office. That's what you were waiting for, eh?
TL's office?
Team lead. And he sat me down, small talked, asking about each other's weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very great weekend it was indeed. Oh, hey, Josh, you remember what your... Why I had to fucking laugh. Okay, let me start again. Oh, hey, Josh, remember what your customer, the negative feedback they gave you that other time about, on occasion, you'd go through an issue and you try to help them out and it becomes evident you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that was good.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I know you improved it. And then it's been a couple weeks since that improvement. And we're back as to where we were before.
So like you're getting the same complaints?
Mm-hmm. Rather, I think I recovered. Some feedback complaints came in. And then it was a check-in the very next week because I was probably flagged at this point. So they had to do a weekly check-in to see if it doesn't improve, then we have to give him the boot. So at this point, after that weekly check-in, they asked, "Hey, how is Josh doing about that? This situation? Has anything changed this past week?" "Oh no, this week is pretty similar to last." "Okay, thank you." And so I'm called into the office, or I go into my weekly meeting, and it's delivered. Not much has changed, and we can't risk the relationship with our customer. We don't want our customer to come to us to ask for a new TS, so we have to let you go. And it's not you. You're very capable. Otherwise, you would have never gotten this job in the first place. It's just this isn't a fit.
But it is.
But it is. Are you playing my spot? My role? Oh yeah. Is that my argument?
Yeah, this is Josh's. But it is.
Wow, you did great. That's exactly how I responded.
What did you say?
Yeah, that's tough. There's a lot of like shell shock.
Yeah.
In the moment. There's a lot to take in and a lot to process. At this time, I was trying to understand timelines the best I could. Like, what should I expect now that I'm just been delivered this? And are there any options here? There's no options. That's made clear.
Decision's been made.
Yeah, decision's been made. No options.
Wow.
April 19th, you're out. That was the date.
Yeah.
I think like that 2nd or 3rd is a Wednesday, middle of February in 2019. Go back in your calendars. Tell me what day it is. I don't quite remember. But it's a day in infamy where that news was delivered to me. Were you like, do you think there's a calendar on the mixer?
I'm just looking for an appropriate. Oh wait, can you just say, can you say that you got fired again?
Yeah.
Just say it.
I got fired. What is that one called?
Sad trombone.
Okay. Anyway, getting back on point.
So you're just asking about timelines.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what's expected in the coming weeks. If I have 2 months of coming into work, knowing that I'm not going to stay here, how do I work?
Yeah, I was also gonna ask, like, when they're doing those check-ins, now that you're like an employee that's just gonna get the boot, like, are they continuing doing like check-ins?
I don't think so.
That's interesting. So it's like they already know you're off the thing.
they're probably speaking to the customer in a way of having to work out this transition. So the news is delivered first at the high level, like the highest level that we engage with. That, hey, we're replacing one of our TSs. So expect this coming down the line, and then it's delivered to the IT team, and the IT team now knows to expect to have to work with a new TS.
I just find that so cruel. I just mean, like, they don't even try maybe to like transfer you to another team, or like, did you ever hear of that happening? Like, if someone's not performing well, let's say you're the client you have, maybe like moving you to like a different team, or is it just like, you didn't perform well here, we're just not going to give you any options?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if they do that.
It's just weird.
They might.
Not weird. I mean, I guess it's normal for a lot of companies. Like, they're not obligated to help you.
Yeah, not always. It's tough because if you give the red flags enough to them, you're early on. Okay, this is probably the best answer. If you're new and you've only worked with 3 customers, and
you don't have much, like,
you don't have anything. Yeah, you don't have the credibility to argue, to say like, hey, look, I've supported customers well in the past. Just bring me to a new team and I'll be able to handle it. And it may have just been this one relationship that just wasn't so strong. So with that, then you might be able to transfer. That was the argument given to me at that time when I was given the boot. So I didn't have the credibility there, and I had to go forward. But then again, like, I didn't talk about this too much. But Epic does have a history of firing a lot, turnover with, many companies do, but they have it, I guess, to a level where there's websites dedicated to them. One website called Life After Epic, lifeafterepic.com, has a lot of resources. This was really great. I love this one. And it was put together by people who didn't get fired. It was put together by people who just left Epic over time, and they speak nothing but good of it. So the resources there are to help somebody who's leaving the company to be able to find ways to work at a new place using the skills that they've learned during their time at Epic. Because there's definitely valuable skills that you can blend into a new job. It's just like, how do you communicate that? How do you come across with that? Especially when Epic has a lot of their own language that they use internally when it comes to things like almost, yeah.
So I was gonna say, and they also have like a non-compete, right? So
they also have a non-compete. Yeah. So a big struggle coming out of Epic is the non-compete getting in the way of you finding a company that you can work at. You can easily get a job at a healthcare organization on their IT team, like one of the people that you're working with day to day. Companies will pay you, healthcare organizations would pay you a significant amount of money to be on their IT team, but you can't until after a year after your termination. So that's a year of having to figure something out.
Yeah.
The non-compete conflicts with that. And companies respect it. Companies understand that there's a non-compete. Companies understand that there's a big pool of talent out there that can't work for a certain amount of time, and they'll wait. Sometimes they'll wait for the year to wrap up and keep track of that, to reach out to prospective employees to say, hey, I know your non-compete's wrapped up. Are you open for a new job? And they'll recruit you. This is common practice for people who leave Epic. So I've had messages in my LinkedIn DMs. Yeah, I was going to say DMs now. I was like, this is professional. And asking about work using Epic. So being that Epic is now on my LinkedIn profile, now it's on my resume, that's something that healthcare organizations will search by. They'll search by last date being a year after today to see if your name pops up. And so if that last day is a year from today, they know your non-compete's over and they're your talent that's available. So that's one thing that like you have to keep in mind now. There's another website called firedfromepic.blogspot.com. This one is great. because you get a lot of there's a lot of people who speak anonymously because they're too worried about speaking about this publicly, with their opinions of how it was working at Epic. And like a lot of what I said today too was tough for me to say, because do I want to place blame on Epic or do I want to place blame on myself? And I think it's a little bit of both. There's definitely a lot of shortcomings I had. Let me start with the other way around. There's definitely a lot of issues with the culture and the work-life balance of what's expected for you at Epic. But there's definitely a lot of things that I can speak to as to what I could have done better. I mean, and it became evident as we were going through it. It became evident that there's like some feedback that I wasn't receiving so well. And it's evident that I struggled to take in a lot of the feedback to even like come up with great examples, because I probably ignored it so much to an extent that I wasn't working on it. I wasn't taking actionable steps to improve, because if I did, then it would have been clear and easy to a point where you ask, hey, Josh, what's something that you could work on or that could have worked on that you may have ignored? Well, I ignored it. So there's the issue right there. So I place blame, I think is a combination. It's between me and it's improvements that could have been on Epic's side, and there's improvements that could have been on my side. But a lot of what you'll read on Fired by Epic is a lot of the insider perspective of how it is working at Epic, and more of the dark side of things. Not necessarily taking blame yourself all the time, or the people don't always take blame themselves as to what they could have done better. I've read a lot of stories. I don't know how much truth there is to it. And there probably is, like employees working there for 5 years or so, 5-10 years, and then out of nowhere, they're fired.
Really?
Like with situations like we were just talking about, like you'd expect one-off situations could be recoverable, where if you have a bad relationship with one customer, given that you have the 8 years of credibility behind you, you could just transfer over to a new department. You can transfer over to a new team. That is what I would understand. So like when you ask that question too, of wouldn't there be other options here? And if Epic explores those options, there are stories online that makes me question that. But also I don't know the credibility of these stories too, because a lot of it's anonymous.
It's just like I guess even like the reason I asked that, I think even like my job, the way that they feel about they value you, since like, let's say even you, like you worked at like almost a year at Epic, regardless of how you like perform with the client, like you still have value with the knowledge that you gained from working there. Yeah. So like, that's how like my job, that's how they treat it. It's like even if you want to leave, they'll offer you positions on other teams if you tell them that you want to leave, because like they value the fact that you've just worked there for a year. Like just think about the amount of time it would take to hire someone else and then like train them to do your position, like like you have to do it all over again. Whereas like you have already done it. Okay, you didn't perform that well, but if they put you on a new team, let's say with like different clients, maybe you can like do better. But they just didn't give you the opportunity. Yeah. I just feel
Epic definitely doesn't like operate that way.
I just feel like the fact that they have the non-compete, so like they don't want you to work for anyone else, but it's like you already have this knowledge of like Epic that is just going to go nowhere now. It's like they could have used you like anywhere else. Like they could have tried, but I guess they just don't care.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point here. And I think the difference is the resources that Epic has. Yeah. The sheer amount of resources.
Do you think it's just like to them, it's just like it's easy to them to just.
It's like pennies.
Yeah.
It's pennies for them. Yeah. In the healthcare organization, there's so much money flowing in.
Yeah, that's true.
And so where they're able to draw the line, I guess, is we'll just bring in new talent, train them up. They have the training down pack of like right from the gates. Like there's huge amounts of resources that's pulled in for each individual, like you feel invested into. Yeah. Just by, I mean, they fly all their employees in for interviews. Not employees, prospects of people candidates that might get a job at Epic. They're flown in, and you stay at a nice hotel. They take you out for dinner, and then they give you a tour of their campus. I mean, you get the tour of the campus. It looks like this fantasy land.
Yeah.
So, of course, you feel well invested into that. A company wouldn't invest all this time and energy into you just to fire you in the end. But the amount of resources that Epic has, and like I don't have the numbers, so like don't
take your word for it.
Take my word for it. Yeah, exactly. There's a amount of power that they have to this situation that. If they're looking at the end of the day to provide the best support for their customers, they're like rated top tier for like their customer support when it comes to the healthcare. There's like a organization that does ratings called KLAS, and KLAS KLAS is an acronym. I don't know what for, but they will rate Epic time and time again best in customer support across all like other EMR systems.
I guess it just feels like they'd rather keep that status than have to like have somebody that like could risk like lowering it. They'd rather just hire someone else to
that's what it becomes.
Further that risk.
They'll take the losses of putting somebody who has had red flags with a customer and introducing that risk to a new customer. They'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
They'd rather get rid of you or, okay. I think in my thoughts, they would rather get rid of you than staff you to another customer. Just because of the reputation that's at risk rather than the, easy save of like training time that they can just now in like some companies' mindsets, that's a lot of money to invest. But in their minds, with being able to save their reputation and relationships with their customers, that's valued a lot more than the amount of money that's invested into flying employees, candidates in to interview and training them from the ground up. So yeah,
Man, I gotta pee.
Yeah, well, we're closing up soon. I hope you can hold it for a little bit longer, John.
I've been squirming these last 10 minutes.
Wow. Well,
Holding out.
There's a few other things, important key things I want to talk about now.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the most value holds because I'm fired now. What do I do next? This is like an insurmountable challenge right here. It's a tough thing to get yourself out of. First failure that I'm really experiencing. I'm not used to this. And taking failure was not easy for me. But it's something that knowing the risk that I was walking myself into, like just the risk of leaving the state, it's a whole new thing that's introduced to me that I should be aware and ready to accept failure. And that was something that I thought I walked into Wisconsin with, because part of what I was talking about when moving to Wisconsin in a previous episode was that I was opening myself up to like different possibilities and outcomes. Like if things hit the wall, like while it might be like worst case scenario, I don't want it to happen. I would have like the willpower to like sustain that and move forward and recover from that. I would just be mindful of it while not necessarily having to hope that things would go in that direction. Of course, no one wants things to hit the wall. So it's just being ready. So if things do hit the wall, like you don't spend time
dwelling on it,
moping around, just looking at paint dry. And if you are mindful of it, you can easily just now take the steps to recover from it. So I quickly made this. There was a lot to process. There was a hell of a lot of shit to process when the news was first delivered to me. But one of the decisions I made was I wasn't returning to the biomedical engineering field. And I wasn't going to stay in healthcare either. Biomedical engineering was my degree. I never really practiced the profession all that much outside of graduating with a degree, because Epic was not really a biomedical engineering company. It was a healthcare software company. So I wanted to take my career forward in technology. So that was a decision I made early on and decided to proceed with. Now, there was the biggest takeaway I have from this, though, is like to quickly accept that failure. You can't, like we said, dwell on it. And there's something that I was reading recently in a book called Obstacles the Way, recommended from Alex Lago. Shout out Alex Lago, good friend of ours. Who,
Also my personal lawyer.
Yeah, and his personal lawyer, who we don't speak to often, but he's a great friend of ours anyway. Obstacles the Way by Roland Holiday. They have a part in it that, the whole like premise behind it is that if an obstacle comes, persevere through it. Like, there's going to be obstacles in your path. You're naive to think that there's not going to be obstacles. Everyone faces obstacles somewhere in their life. Use that as an opportunity to continue to advance yourself. Use it as first discard this perception that obstacles aren't going to happen. Be prepared for it in the case that it does happen. And don't let it like hinder your mindset. But then be willing to take action to get past the obstacles. But also in the end, there are going to be obstacles that you can't pass, and being willing to accept that. So in this situation, I had to endure a fate that was something that was hard to accept. Getting fired. Mm-hmm. And there's ways to take this. You can either be terribly upset with yourself and discouraged and have nothing to be in complete denial, or you can accept it and take it with grace. There's a saying that was brought up in the book called amor fati. Love everything that happens is what it translates to, I think. And that's what I wrote down. Love everything that happens. So even the terrible things that happen to you, take it with compassion to the situation. There's an example that they gave in the book, Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, if you didn't know.
No, I didn't.
Over here in Roselle.
Oh, that's great.
First light bulb was lit a town away from where we are today. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's true. And so he had his own like lab, his own like workstation or like employees and everything later on in his life. And it went ablaze. The whole thing came down in flames. And when he saw it, his response to it was, oh, well, there was a lot of junk in there anyway. So you could either like see your whole life's work go down in flames, or you can see the silver linings. Mm. And he took the opportunity to see the silver lining, and he built it back up. And like within less than a year or a few years thereafter, I don't remember the timelines, he was making more revenue than he was making the previous years. So you can't let failure hold you back. That's the big like takeaway here, where I got fired. 10 months later, I'm back. I'm back. It took me 10 months to secure a new position that I'm happy with. And above where I was back then. So after 10 months of taking jobs, going through training, I decided to move back to New Jersey. That was a big factor in my decision. Some place where there's a little cushion for safety, or be in a little more risk averse now because I don't have much opportunity to take risks. That I moved back to New Jersey. And then following that, I made the decision, I know you got to pee, to do my certification in data science and use that as the stepping stone to get myself back on track. And it took a lot of focus. It took a lot to get back from that failure, but we're here.
I feel like you touched on the biggest takeaway. But how do you feel I think it's important to take those failures in stride, like you said. But what about like just being depressed? Like, do you think it's important, or not important, but like to also like let in those emotions too, like the sadness, like to not push that away either.
Mm-hmm. So
I also think too, like, it's easier said than done sometimes.
to let in those emotions, or
I guess
to
both.
like put the emotions. Well,
Both.
I guess that's where you were thinking
Yeah.
the opposite. So, yeah, you want to be honest with yourself, honest where you have your shortcomings, and that will allow you to accept that failure a lot faster, and the like emotional response you might have to like a setback like that. To say, yeah, you really didn't do that great of a job here. You didn't really handle situations the best that you could have handled it, or maybe like the work situation you're in was just fucked and unethical, and which is not what I'm claiming here, but for situations where that might be true,
Yeah.
things were just against you. That may very well be true, but is it worth the time and energy to spend your thought on that? Is it worth the amount of time thinking about it over and over and over again?
I mean, I guess like the distinction is then to like, you should like do that, like reflect on like the bad, but just don't do it too much. like go through it, but don't let that like overwhelm you to the point where that's like all that you're thinking about.
Yeah, you want to be aware that it's not doing you any good to play through scenarios more than once.
Yeah, because I like that too. I mean, even those failures suck, but it's like it happened. Like what? There's nothing. I do agree with that. Like, there's no point in trying to think about like how things could be different, because it's never going to be different.
Nothing's gonna change the fact that I got fired.
So like if anything, you should, I mean, think about like what got you there, which is like what we did today. Like you're reflecting back on like what brought you to that point, but we haven't spoke about like what you could have done differently, because what's the point?
Yeah. Oh, well, the point is,
well, I mean, it's good to think about in the sense of like think about what you could have done differently just in the future, because like if you come across similar situations, you should think of those failures and think about how you can improve from them to not like fall into that again.
That's the biggest benefit of failure.
Yeah.
Is you have now known what has contributed to your failure, and you know what you can do to do better.
Yeah.
One of the things I was listening to today, Elon Musk, he talks about this, and many others will talk about this too. It's the stupidest thing to do is the stupidest thing you can do with like starting a company or a business is to enter into it thinking that you might not fail or that you wouldn't fail. Any business that could be started has a huge prospect of failure. You have to accept that like from the get-go. It would have been much better in my favor to accept the thought that like I could move out to Wisconsin and things won't work in my favor. Things won't work to like persevere through this new environment and like thrive. Sometimes you don't thrive, and there's huge setbacks that you should be willing to accept, placing yourself in a risk of a risky scenario, perhaps.
Yeah. So I guess like having it in the back of your mind that it could not work out.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like what we said before, like don't let that be the main like driver of your thoughts, like thinking, oh, this might not work out, because then
don't let that hinder you either.
Just make sure you acknowledge both. Like you should always, I think it's a good mix of both.
Well, I think it's also where you are in life. Some people aren't in a situation where they should be taking risks. While we're young, I think it's important that we take as many risks as we can, or at least that meets their risk appetite. You don't want to, of course, enter into the deep end of everything, but you should have a higher appetite for risk at our age than when you're settled down and you have a family, because you have kids and like a wife to think about at the end of the day, or like bills that you weren't really considering to the level that you might be that you would be considering like down the line. So right now, if you're listening as an audio listener or a YouTube watcher, and you are in your 20s, not married, single, male, female, binary, non-binary, however you identify, and you have room for comfort, take some risks. You might fail. You might get fired. Probably not. But there's a possibility of getting fired. Well, be willing to accept that. But take the risk anyway. And see what happens.
Because failure can be viewed as a good thing too. It's the building blocks.
Obstacle is the way.
Obstacle is the way. That was beautiful.
Yeah. It always is. I don't think I missed anything, right? Oh, one last thing.
Guys, thanks for watching the We Should Talk
Never
More
again
podcast.
live life with purpose only for working at your company. Live life with more meaning than that.
I like that. That sounds like an Alex Lago quote. Oh, it's a book quote?
No,
It's just something you wrote down?
it's just something I wrote down.
That's cute.
That's why we do this.
to have cute little voice snippets?
No, this is why we do the podcast. There's more meaning to life than our work.
That's true. Very true.
There's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So,
guys, I've had to pee for the last 28 minutes.
What you got going on
it's
today?
Been great. Right now, the rest of the day, I gotta pee. That's
What
my
are your
main
plans?
concern. Main concern, pee. That's it. That's what I got going on for the rest of the day.
Kylie's out of town.
Kylie, I think she's waiting for me to pee. Kylie's waiting for me to finish this pee so we can hang out directly after the podcast.
That's beautiful.
Shouldtalkmore.com.
Yeah, shouldtalkmore.com. You can find our socials, the link to this video, some show notes, and the YouTube video, the YouTube channel.
It's on the website.
Check us out. All the information you'd ever want.
Subscribe.
And contact information if you have to reach out to me or John.
Follow us. Like our posts. Share our post. Live, eat, breathe. Should talk more.
Let us know what you thought about this episode and what we can do better. Thank you so much. Oh, you're not going to stop it? You're always the one to stop the recording, not me. Jesus, new responsibilities. I'm not getting paid for this.